Welcome back, flower friends. Rokana and I today are looking to explore the topic of energetic detoxing. We've been talking about this a little bit, and it fits in really nicely with the season of fall. This whole, what are we letting go of? What are we? What sorts of inputs have we taken in over our lifetime or over the year? And that with the fall, it gives us an opportunity to look at everything and decide what we're ready to release, just like the trees release their leaves, to be composted and returned into nutrients. We can also have the opportunity to decide what we're ready to release and let go of, and what we do want to hold on to and integrate into ourselves. So that's the type of season that we're looking at. And we're looking at the energetic toxins, maybe the emotional toxins that we've taken in, and how we can go about releasing them. The season is one where the energy is drawing inward. And so if we have any little field injuries or field openings, things will enter. And that will give us an opportunity to go, oh, hey, there's a little spot there that I could be healing. And then also, how do we get rid of what may have entered? We're going to jump into this topic a little bit. I think you'll find it interesting and useful. And first, I just wanted to say, hey, Ro, checking in with you. What have you been up to lately?
Hi, Kathleen. Oh, yeah. There's always something going on with the School for Flower Essence Studies
Mm.
lately that we are both founding members. And uh, the the latest thing, I know you're going to talk about what you're working on with the classes, and I can tell people that we've just released some bundles from the conference that was earlier this year, and we've taken and curated some of the topic focused sessions and created a bundle, one for being a for trauma informed flower essence therapy, and another bundle for the sessions supporting empaths and sensitives with flower essences. And so they're just nice, more of a bite size, smaller amount of information for a lower cost. And we thought that would make it more accessible for people who might not have had the time, money, or energy to intake the entire conference, even though it was so full of such amazing speakers and sessions. We wanted, there's some really important work, I think, that was uncovered by that conference, and we wanted to make it more accessible. So those have just been released at the School for Flower Essence Studies, and I'm working on more things to be announced in the future, but that's the latest.
Yeah, there's a lot
Uh,
going on in the background all the time.
Absolutely.
And it is nice to have those bundles out because the whole conference was maybe a little bit much or for some people, and you want to take it in little chunks. So we're trying to make it accessible for folks. And then we've started the botanical studies for flower essence therapy, where we're talking about this is an ongoing course that Ruth Toledo Altschuler and I are teaching on the botanical definings that help us organize our flower essence practices and help us organize our thinking about how flower essences work. This last week, we were diving deep into one of my favorite families, the Ericaceae, which is the family with heather and rosemary. I'm sorry, bog rosemary and bog blueberry, different essences from the Alaskan Essence series. So it's such an important family. As a practitioner, I'm really deeply involved in this family because I find it to be healing on such primary levels of attachment and bonding, and also our ability to connect into the earth for the support that the earth wants to offer us. So that's what we've been up to. And we wanted to jump into this topic of the energetic detox because it certainly seems to be coming up. Ro, do you want to talk about some of the aspects that come up when you are maybe energetically toxic?
Yeah, well, there's a few pieces. I think that you can kind of, what does it really mean to be to have a sense of energetic or emotional toxicity around you? What is that doing? How would you know? And one of the ways I like to look at it is, if there's this chronic feelings of anxiousness, agitation, and low mood, that it goes with a feeling of being overburdened, that there's so much incoming information, emotions, energy of others, that um it feels overburdening, and really contributes to this sort of mental stress and heaviness and this feeling of needing clarity. We can tend to hold on to stuff, and that's where the toxicity comes from, is when there's so much coming at us, and we haven't had, maybe we've been in survival mode and we haven't had the capacity to deal with it, and so it kind of can stick in our bodies or stick in our energy field. That's how I tend to see it. Is that how you look at it, Kathleen?
Like everything, it's complex. I totally agree that having the space and energy to process incoming data, incoming sensations, imprints, there needs to be that slower downtime so that you can process through it. And any energy that was too much to process can be toxic, right? It's just too much. Any sort of flow needs to continue. And when there's a backup, a buildup of impressions, of input, of thoughts, feelings, emotions, everything, when it gets stuck, it gets stagnant. And then, it can be perceived as toxic. It sort of becomes that way just because it needs to move. So I completely agree that our lives are just generally speaking so kind of overwhelmingly over much. There's so much input coming in all the time that we need to create these experiences in our life where we can slow down and drop and release things and process through things, so that they don't become that sort of stagnation. I think that this season gives us a very strong push to do this work. We've come out of a summertime where the energies are, and this is from the Chinese medicine perspective, the energies are up and out, and it's sunshine and warmth and joy and connection and activity and all of the things that are happening in the summer. And then we get into the fall season and the energy sort of starts drawing down and in. It's the tide moving back in, and we start bringing things in. And so if we have still unprocessed stuff from the summer that we haven't had time to release, now we have more stuff coming on top. And that can really create a significant of an overwhelm, of an over everything. So I would definitely like to talk about some sort of digestion essences, that would be useful for that. And also that anxiousness, I think, is one of the hallmarks of that energy coming into you, because you start to feel like, oh, it's too much. And you just kind of have your nerves getting fired, and it feels like anxiety. Is that your experience?
Yeah, you've touched on a couple things that really tie in as well to the Ayurvedic um, uh, framework. And uh, on the mental space, in the mental space, there's everything that you were saying with impressions, and that's the word used a lot about, in Ayurveda and the Mind by David Frawley, is a really great book that describes this. And I haven't seen it laid out like this in any other place, but he really goes in detail about how the different impressions that come in through our sensory system, all of our senses, what we see, what we hear, um, and how that impacts our mind, our mental state, our emotional state, and our physical state. And that the first thing to do when wanting to um, cleanse from this overburdening is to stop the impressions coming in, and that's what you would do if you were going to go on a dietary cleanse. So, and it's interesting too that the best times of the year for dietary cleanses are spring and fall. I just want to make a note before I go on, because detox and cleanse, they're real buzzwords and they're used a lot. And it, it I after having worked at an herb store and having hundreds and hundreds of people coming in and ask how they can, like detox their liver or things like that. I want to just, point out that we naturally detox. Our body naturally detox, our liver, that's its job. And what we can do to help it is to stop the bombardment with toxic foods, drinks, drugs, whatever all the things are that are putting a heavy burden on it. And that's like the first step, rather than going to some kind of hardcore, cleansing agent. And so that's the I think that the healthy, approach from an herbal perspective, but also from a flower essence perspective. And is to start there, is to start with what are all the things coming in, what are all the impressions that you're taking in? Are you watching a lot of violent movies? Are you doom scrolling on social media? Are you eating a lot of junk food or things that are just not doing well for you? Let's take a breath, take a beat, and see where we can pull back on some of those things. And that it makes a huge impact on the whole body mind complex. Um, so so there's that piece of it. And then with the fall, as you said, the other correlation with Ayurveda is this is now we've moved into the Vata time of year. And the Vata time of year is when people tend to get more anxious, and there's more of a nervous system dryness. And the so it's so funny to always compare this with you. This is why I love having these conversations with your lens and then my lens, and comparing it.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind these differentiations. It's like the origins of these medical systems are coming out of the same nature-based observation. So it has a different accent basically, but they're both speaking a very, very similar language. And I think it's interesting too. I really enjoy when you bring that in, because it's like, oh yeah, yeah, okay, it's a slightly different worldview, but very, very aligned. And it's also, I just appreciate how much it comes out of an observation of natural cycles and the seasons. And we as modern people, we kind of forget about seasons, except for when we walk through the mall and now it's pumpkin spice season. I don't know, you know we can really get disconnected, and yet the seasons go on whether we are consciously aware of them or not. And to become more attuned with these seasonal earth cycles, it helps us to take care of ourselves better. It helps us to connect more to the earth, to be more attuned, and to, like you say, be able to drop some of these connections that are not feeding us in healthy ways. I think is part of that is connecting to this perpetual pulse of the earth, this cycle, the seasons, like the nature around you, helps you to recognize that whatever the most recent post on Twitter was is maybe not as essential for you to know and not as important for you to stay hooked into. That's really one of the things that does drive a lot of anxiety, is that overwhelm of over input of data. And definitely, like you're saying, that doom scrolling thing, it really hooks you into a something that's probably not that healthy for your body to do on a all the time kind of basis. Check in, drop out. Keep informed. I think it's good to be an informed citizen, and then also not to be obsessive about it. And it certainly is designed to create that obsessiveness. It's just how the system was created. So one of the essences that I think is really important for this whole topic is the red clover. It's so important to help you kind of get out of that mass hysteria that builds, especially in the fall when we start looking at things like world events and elections and stuff like that. And you can just get, go down that rabbit hole of like, oh my God, the world's about to end. And, who knows? But the only thing that we can do is manage our own nervous systems. And red clover helps you to keep your nervous system with a little bit of an air gap from the nervous system from the rest of the world. And I know this is one that you use too. Yeah.
I absolutely love red clover. I both as the herb and as the flower essence. And it, as the herb, it works on that. Um, they consider it a quote unquote blood cleanser, which really is helping things flow in the lymphatic system. And so it energetically, I feel like it does that too. So it's helping things, that negative stuff that we're taking on, that we're taking in, and and it's coming in from like the outside, from others, from that society, from that collective, from the group think, um and we're feeling the weight of that. And maybe it's even coming in from our own generational trauma, our past lives, our epigenetic trauma. Maybe it's just coming in that way, and that we've just been carrying that. And I think red clover is good for letting it go in a very calming, grounded way. It's a plant that it's it it's close to the ground the way that it grows, and it's got that very groundedness to it. That's part of it. It's in the pea family. And even though the flowers might grow up to a certain height, the plant itself is quite low growing. And it's a flower head of this magenta, beautiful magenta, tiny flowers that are in a like a ball, like the head, and so it speaks to that signature, really kind of speaks to that um group energy, and clearing that out.
That quality of clearing the blood I'm starting to think of it through that when these thought forms or anxiety or fears, whatever, have penetrated you into the fluid level and it starts to overheat your blood. And I'm using the capital letter blood to mean like in from the Chinese medicine perspective is all the fluids of the body, not just the red stuff in your veins. It's all the fluids, and so the lymph and everything. And so when we get these inputs, it tends to overheat everything. And so I like that red clover starts to cool that system, cooling and helping it to release that excessive heat, which is that overactivity, that anxiety, that stress, the things that you've picked up from the collective. I really wonder how much of these anxieties that we feel in this collective kind of panic really are, like you were saying, that epigenetic level that our ancestors experienced these traumas, and our bodies are remembering that. And the more that we can support ourselves to be sane in these times where sanity is being challenged, I think that we're doing our ancestors a favor too as we help heal ourselves. It's really, yeah, I think it's sort of a primary essence for the times.
Yeah. And I don't I I feel like even I underuse it. Like every time I go back to use it, oh yeah, red clover, why don't I use that more? And so it's one, I don't know, we don't maybe haven't talked about that much. So, but it's so important and so just overall beneficial to the system, that it's really a great one, I think, to have in the flower essence kit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm like like you. It's like I don't use it enough, and every time I think about it, I'm like, why am I not using that? So yeah, agreed. I think probably we'll both we're putting it out there, like everyone use more red clover, and we're talking to ourselves too.
Exactly.
The um, I think that we can talk about. I mean, because I think there's two aspects of this energetic detox. There's the energetic detox of what is already penetrated, and then the energetic detox of releasing what's incoming, or not releasing incoming, avoiding incoming, more incoming. And I think that, so we're the red clover, I think, very much is when it's already definitely penetrated your system, and your system is impacted internally by that. I also use purification, the Alaskan essences combination, a lot for kind of like what's already made its way through your system, and to help release that, and then also protect from it coming in again. But that's not its primary function, I believe, is to release what's already kind of penetrated in your system. I think you're using it the same
Yeah.
way?
Yeah, I think the purification blend, it's when stuff is already either in like your energy field or your space. It's a great space clearing blend. And then same, there's one I use from Delta Gardens, a blend called Clearing. And that one is definitely to like to release what's, kind of stuck in your field. And it's got some heavy hitters in that for releasing, like in the Artemisia family, flowers such as Sweet Annie and Moxa. So I think the there's one, there's a few that are protective. And what did you have in mind when you were saying that? Was it milk thistle?
Certainly, that's a possibility. I want to differentiate a little bit the purification blend from the Alaskan and the clearing blend from Delta. I'm looking at the components. The purification Alaskan combination has essences that are very much earth and water, as far as the releasing qualities. Certainly the black tourmaline, it just takes these toxins, energetic toxins. We're not talking necessarily physical toxins, but like these stuff, and just helps you just drop it down. And the gems are so important for these releasing processes. So black tourmaline there, and it's got fireweed, which repatterns. But Portage Glacier, as the environmental essence, has obviously it's a glacier, so it's frozen water, and it has these just whooshing energies that help to release things. And then the Delta blend for clearing has a lot of these APACA, the air element. So I think that you could use both of those in concert. Like with the Angelica, and I see the Angelica, which is one of the essences in the clearing blend, as being kind of that external field shield. Definitely that airy element, so helping to keep ideas and thought forms that don't belong to you out of your system. That's I do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting because these two blends are so different in their makeup. So purification blend, just to recap, it contains black tourmaline, fireweed, portage glacier, and sweetgrass, the lovely sweetgrass. And the Delta Gardens clearing blend contains angelica, golden seal, sweet Annie, and moxa. And I'm not sure which exact species of Artemisia mugwort that they are using for their moxa. Um, and what I learned, with David Dalton, with some of these artemisias, these petalless flowers in that family, is that
Compositing.
they're is that they're extremely releasing. So they are even best used like by themselves, um, and they even use the term like dumping, like let's dump it. So that's a process that might create a brief cleansing crisis or healing crisis, or emotional reaction in the very beginning. So it's not something I usually just start with for clients. I definitely prefer the more kind of diffusive clearing that I feel is coming from the Portage Glacier. And all of that water, all of that water is such a wonderful detoxifier and clearer. That cold, if you imagine, I imagine that cold, you know, glacier water, that it's actually made from glacier water in that essence, and how just purifying that is. And it's I don't know, it's hard to articulate. Maybe you can do it better than I can, but it has that feeling of like washing away, just washing away. Even though it's powerful, it doesn't feel as pulling as the artemisias do.
Yeah, because it's more that experience of if you've been, like, to Yosemite and you stand near the waterfalls and you get just, like, blasted with the what is it, negative ions, and you could just feel like everything's, like, flushing away off your system, and that's kind of that energetic of what the glaciers are doing, it's giving you that just sort of, like, just standing and just having it kind of blown off of you. Yeah, you're right, moxa and sweet annie, those have more of a catalytic kind of energy, where they're kind of excavating things. Another essence that I use in this context, and it's an interesting discussion, like you're saying, it's not somewhere you'd necessarily start, but the Hawaiian essences from Jane Bell, she has one called Clean Sweep. And this is one that I have used singularly, whenever somebody comes and they've just got so much going on and they don't even know where to start. It's just when you start talking to them, they're just so kind of scattered and there's so many different things. I just like, okay, hang on, let's just put this on pause. And I want you to take clean sweep alone for like 2 weeks and then see what's really underneath all of this stuff. Because sometimes you really do need that like clarity before you can even start working on whatever the issues might be, because they're usually different than what you think they are. When you have so much, mental and psychological, spiritual, whatever clutter, um, it can really send you down the path of, sort of like working on this and working on this and working on this. It's like, slow down and let's just clean house here for a little bit. And the clean sweep gives you that vibe. It's that, and it's a little bit gentler, it's a little more like that Hawaiian breeze rather than a glacier, a glacier melt. So it's a different vibe. But I really like it for that sort of semi short term use to help just whoosh away a lot of things that are happening. And then, now we can actually see what's really there.
Yeah, that's right. I actually forgot about Clean Sweep, and isn't that a great name? It's got that imagery of just, taking a broom and sweeping it away. And we used to do that at the herb shop. We would spray Clean Sweep around at the beginning of the day, to just clean things out, and then use the purification blend after, say, a customer would come in with really negative energy, and we just wanted to kind of get rid of it. And that was where, so we would use them both in tandem like that. And that was great when you're dealing with the public and all of that, energetic stuff that can come into a space when you're working with the public.
And isn't that the phase one hygiene, right? It's phase one energetic hygiene. I completely agree that these blends that we're talking about, I'm not sure about the Delta Gardens, whether it comes in drops and spray, but the other two do. So you can use them externally in your space. And then you can also take them, the drop versions, internally. But yeah, why don't you just, before everything sort of, swamps you and you've taken it all in, you could just, like, the minute it happens, you just missed yourself and missed your environment, and you can do a lot of clearing without it ever having to really impact you. So doing that, it's basic like energetic hygiene.
I think we can't go too much farther down the path without bringing in crabapple from the Bach flower remedies, and because it's just such a classic for this, and it's such an interesting essence that I don't think that I really fully appreciated until more recent years, that it it's just an all around great cleanser, but the personality type that sort of goes with it is the one who is um kind of very despondent because everything's always going wrong, and they think that, that it's just, if you've ever met anyone like that, where there's just always something going wrong in their life. There's always drama, there's always these challenges. And I like have this visual of that character, Pigpen in Peanuts. And that's what I always think of, that, there's this like black cloud hanging over this person, and you can really see it when you have perspective. But they can't really see it so much because they're so inside that. But we don't, have to be that person in order to benefit from crabapple, because there's always these times where we might feel like just have one of those days, where everything seems to be going wrong, and we keep blaming ourselves, and we think that there's something wrong or bad with us that is causing it. And that sort of that feeling like, we're bad, we're dirty, we're just not a good person, and all of these things keep happening. I don't know, is that how you would describe crabapple?
It's interesting. It's certainly the pig pen scenario, absolutely visually. And also there's that element to the personality type fit for this, that just is always somebody who's always talking about going on another cleanse, or is just really focused on keeping their diet really clean, and having trying to make life as perfect as they can, and not I'm not sure whether it's about like trusting that your body has it, but there's this just underlying feeling like there is something impure about you, or wrong about you. And crabapple, it just has such a sweet energy. It's so interesting how it if you've ever, encountered a crabapple tree when they're in bloom, they're so beautiful. They're so like white and bright pink and so pretty and airy. And it's obviously it's in the Rosaceae family. It's there with the roses. It does speak to the heart space, and it just has this just whooshing clearing energy that helps you just kind of release all of that agitation of things just aren't right.
Yeah, I don't think I've met a crabapple. It's the wild apple, and I believe it has thorns, right? Um,
I
and
don't
maybe
know. I
you
don't
don't know.
think
Yeah.
so. Yeah,
Okay.
usually they don't, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. There are many ornamental crab apples, and this one was from a wild crab apple, but they have little tiny apples that aren't particularly edible, but birds eat them. But yeah, it's a lovely tree, and you can really see if you've ever seen images of it. You can really get that hit of the energetic of it, just like everything's just perfect. It's just releasing whatever is imperfect.
Yeah, and what I think about when I think about apple, and the signature of that is, when you cut the apple in half and you see that pattern of 5 seeds, and that it's, that pattern, it to me always speaks to the divinity in the human. And so I think that's part of the way that it's, working with our subtle energies, is reminding us that we are indeed divine.
Hmm, nice. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the Apiaceae family because I think that they're really relevant in this topic. We talked a little bit, mentioned the Angelica, which is one of the it's a really important essence that gives you this connection to the angelic realm, but the protection of the angelic realm, where you feel like you've got your angels sort of looking out for you. And so if you're feeling vulnerable, or if you're in a place of transition, and the fall is a season of transition, so we are in a place of transition, supporting your energetic system with essences from this family is quite a valuable thing to do. I'm sure that you use Angelica, but also Queen Anne's lace is in this family, and I know that's a ally for you, right?
Yeah, I didn't think about it when we were talking about the theme for this. It definitely has that protective quality. I I absolutely love the plant signature of the Queen Anne's lace with the bracts underneath the flower that over time fold up to protect that seed. and and really, you could think of that as protecting that life energy, that life force within you. And so that's a really beautiful one to bring into this. Are there other APACAs that you thought about for this?
Absolutely. Dill for sure.
Mhm.
But also with the Queen Anne's lace, it speaks to this quality of discernment. So it helps you open, because a lot of us want to, we don't want to close off to the spirit world. We don't want to close off entirely. We want to stay open, but we want to stay open with alignment, integrity, and discernment. So the Queen's Anne's lace helps you to recognize what information you're taking in is true and is sort of in integrity. Queen Anne's lace is one of those really important essences for someone who has a permeability and they can't quite distinguish what what the quality of the data is incoming. It'll help you sort of sift, that's not really true for me, and I can let that go. Just because I received it sort of in an open state doesn't necessarily mean that it's coming from a high source. Queen Anne's lace is valuable that way. And then shifting into the next element. These are not in a hierarchy. These are just coming up as they come up. Dill is so useful for kind of where we started the conversation, which was just that sort of that eh, input overwhelm. You've just taken in so many sensory impressions. For me, this is like going to the mall. There's just so much, so much chatter, visually, energetically. There's just, it's just too much input for me. And so something like dill just kind of helps me kind of like digest that and release that and let that go. I find it to be also one of those underused essences.
Yeah, it's great for digesting whatever it is that you need to digest, and fennel along those lines. I would add to that, moving that energy down and out through the body, that digestive energy. I like what you're saying about the discernment piece, and I think especially for sensitives, it's always, what is this? Is this my energy? Is this my emotion? Or is it coming from somewhere else? What's mine and what's others? And so, of course, we're much more susceptible to all being bombarded by the negative energy in environments and the impressions that we're taking in. And sometimes we don't know, though, where our moods and our feelings are coming from. And there's a couple, I think the gem essences are really helpful in this piece of it. And a couple that, I mean, we briefly mentioned black tourmaline as part of the purification spray, but that in addition to that sort of e- ener- electromagnetic detox kind of energy that black tourmaline has, it it's it has a precision of releasing that toxic and stagnant energy from the body and then replacing it with fresh energy. And I think the smoky quartz, and a lot of times I use these together because that one, with its grounding and calming aspect, it also helps us know, I think, what's ours and what's not ours, and helps us to kind of synchronize and regulate our own self with the earth. And so that grounding helps us to know what's ours and what's not ours.
I can't I almost always have gems in the formulas I make because they're just so foundational. I loved how Steve Johnson of the Alaskan Essences talked about the gem elixirs as being this they help bridge heaven and physicality. They help bridge the energetic shifts that the flowers can create in you, and they help them ground into the body. So almost always I've got a gem essence in a formula that helps to solidify the shift because a lot of times we can do all the release, 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 and then there's almost a vacuum and it can bring in more stuff. And when you've got something like a black tourmaline or smoky quartz or any other gem essence that's appropriate baked into your formulas, it will help to stabilize these shifts and stabilize the releases. So yeah, completely agree that gems are an essential part of the practice. And as we're shifting into this what's mine, what's not mine, let's support our fields with yarrow. More yarrow, please. And all the different varieties and colors and qualities of the yarrows. But just starting off with good old yarrow. Yarrow that the Flower Essence Society makes is a white yarrow, Achillea millefolium, and there's different yarrows from different companies, but just starting off with a good old white yarrow gives your field more solidity and more strength to help keep the stuff out that doesn't need to be in. And so we've talked about like releasing what already made its way in, but let's talk about strengthening our fields so we don't need to um, take in so much stuff.
Absolutely. Yarrow is critical. The white yarrow, the pink yarrow. And I like also the lavender yarrow from Alaskan with when we're talking about that more energy coming in from, through the crown chakra. That's overwhelming. And that one is lovely for that as well.
Yeah, but we can't, I mean, we have to talk about pink yarrow too, because pink yarrow is exactly that. It's the primary essence for empaths. For those of us who take on other people's stuff, when in our families, in our environments, we can just be these emotional sponges. And, that's certainly been part of my path. And Pink Yarrow has been absolutely essential in helping me develop my skills as an empath from a burden into an asset. And that's something that I would encourage anybody to do, because when you cannot differentiate your stuff from somebody else's stuff, it is so overwhelming. You spend your whole life, feeling like you're just losing it because you're just processing all of these emotions from everything around you. Learning to sort of open and close that center of discernment as you go. I can have it open when it's appropriate, and then I can also have it be like, I know that this is happening, but I don't have to process it myself. It's not actually mine. And Pink Yarrow is such a healer for those of us who feel these things. It's so important as part of formulas for empaths.
Yeah, I think too that what we've been talking about and the way we've been talking about it really illustrates the different kinds of ways that we can look at detoxification, energetic detoxification, because there's in some cases it's more emotional, and that's where the perfect example of pink yarrow coming in, and in some cases it's more mental, and with all everything coming in with our thoughts and the impressions that we're taking in mentally and feeling that mental congestion, and that's making our us feel more fuzzy, or not being able to focus and things like that. So it's there, they can both, and of course they can both happen at the same time. I mean, we're getting all of this at the same time, but those are ways that we can look at it. We can look at, well, where, what's happening, what are the indications, and that will help, define, well, which yarrow should I use, or which, one of these other essences that we've talked about.
And I think that the another essence that's really helpful for the empath is the guardian formula from the Alaskan essences. We talked about the purification essence from them, which is that, release essence, and the guardian helps to give you the strongest of boundaries. So use that, after clearing or before entering an energetically dense environment. It will just help you keep your field really, really strong. And that's also spray and drops. Use both, use them liberally, use them all the time.
And to add to that, as I think a final word, the best impression we can give ourselves is nature. Nature is the most healing, calming, clearing thing we can do when we go out and we walk in nature or we be with nature.
100%. You cannot do better as a clearing agent to just go outside. And if you can put your feet on the ground, great. If you can put your palms on a tree, if you can bring your heart field into a tree, if you can just spend some time in nature any way you can, it's going to do you a great benefit.
So happy fall clearing, everybody.
Indeed. And we'll see you next time.
Bye bye now.
Bye.